Hey folks, it's Rob Appell and I'm really excited to bring to you another really great quilting tutorial. Today is a fun free pattern from myself and Benartex Fabrics featuring the Newer Worlds fabric by myself, and I'm really excited to walk you through each and every step you need to make this quilt all by yourself. Are you ready? Let's get stitching. Well, welcome back everybody. That's right, it's going to be another super fun quilting patchwork style tutorial for all of you today. Thank you for joining me here at Sew Well with yours truly, Rob Appell, the caffeinated carefree quilter from Stitchin Heaven out in Quitman, Texas. It's really great to have all of you joining along today. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so now. Smash that like button if you love today's show, and make sure you share it with all of your friends out there, whether they're a new quilter or an advanced quilter, because I've been told we can all learn something wonderful together here in the quilting community. So, yes, I said most of it in the beginning. This is a super cool free pattern. Now, we're not completely done making the quilt top. I need all of your help with that today. I'm going to finish out one of these entire quilt squares. This is the entire unit. This is it. This is the whole deal. All of the colors and everything come together in one big block, sashings included. It's about 20 inches square when complete. And I'm going to make a 12 pack. So 3 by 4 should be roughly 60 by 80 when finished. And like I said, we need to put on that last row to make sure I can tuck my feet under it when I'm finished. It does feature the Newer Worlds fabrics, so Benartex and I have done a couple of wonderful lines. I consider them basics, just tonals, and so we're focusing on the deeper, the earthier, the rich colors, and with Newer Worlds there's a gray, which I think is super fun. And like I said, also on Benartex's website, there's links for all of this, but we have the free pattern so you all may just enjoy this pattern I've designed here for you and had some help, and therefore the name Borrowed Time. So anyways, let's just walk through it as we go together. We're going to dive together right into step 1, and we're going to go ahead and use our fabrics 1 and 2 to make our unit A. It's this center piece here, and it starts with 4.5-inch strips by the width of the fabric. So I have already stripped together multiples. I have cut and made lots of these, so we're just going to build one block with my leftovers as we go today, okay? So the key to something like this is I've gone ahead, I've stitched together with a nice 1/4-inch seam allowance. I have pressed everything over towards the blue, and I've done this with all of my strips so that we can intermatch them later. Because they're 4.5-inch strips this way, we're also going to now subcut 4.5-inch strips this way. So I like to do that by first finding a line, and I actually like to use the dotted line because it's easier for us all to see. And then I come over here 4.5, and I'm making sure that my center seam allowance line first is squared, then my outer edges, and I'm going to need 2 slices for every single block. So let's just make 2 of those now together. And again, 4.5 inches. Oops, I like to use that dotted line, just because the dotted lines are a little finer, a little easier to see through. And then once we have those done, and of course, we're going to do every step along the way for all of the units. And as I said before, there's 12 put together complete for squares there. Unit A is basically a checkerboard, so I'm just going to rotate, spin it like yay, and we're now going to go flip it over. We're going to nest those seams, and we're going to do another 1/4-inch seam allowance here. Securing that nice seam there, we call that nesting, and I'm going to sew on through. And of course, all of this work also should be encouraged to be done chain piecing style, meaning all of my center unit A's, these patchworks, were done over and over again so that then I come over to the iron. And at this point, it's dealer's choice, so just press it to one side. And now set all of these center unit A's aside here. And if you really want to be accurate, but we're wearing Carefree today, should measure at 8.5 square as you see here. Okay, now we're going to build these half square triangle units that form around the outer portion of this. We're going to build the whole block from the center out. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside like I said. And now we're going to match up fabric here, our pink and our gray. So that's our C piece, and then our B piece will be the purple and the gray right sides together. And we're going to get 2 out of each of these. So take the time to draw a single diagonal line. And we're going to stitch 1/4 inch on both sides of those. Again, you can do all of these same size units in chain piece style, but because we're doing half square triangles, you're probably going to want to remove or at least swing the edge guide out of the way there. And then when I'm chain piecing these, I will do all of the same sides using my foot there as that seam allowance guide on the edge or the line I just drew. And once they're all done, I cut them, I stack them, rotate them, stack them in the proper order, I should say. I rotated them as they came off the machine so that I can come back over and we're gonna go ahead and do these also here like this. Okay, sewing along. Okay, like most half square triangles that are done this way, we're going to protect our hands for safety, and we're just going to basically now cut right on that chalk line. And like I said, we do have a lot of steps in this project, in this block, to make each individual block. And I want to point out before we even get into trimming down these half square triangles, the last few pages on your pattern here have all that you need for your fabric and or cutting information. So right here, the last diagram you see is actually the fabric number, right? And its name and color, and I've color coded it for you. Okay, and then in here is our color cutting chart, and it actually continues on with a few of those last black fabrics from the Superior Solids on the back page there. So here you're going to have each fabric. It's going to talk about the unit you're building with it, the size of the strips you'll need it, how many strips you'll need to make everything for this size quilt, the individual unit sizes, and the number of pieces cut through. So right now we're basically going to make 24 of each of these half square triangles you see now that we're using this C unit down here and this B unit here. Also pointing out, I've kept, because the fabric number's in order, so as you go through, you may want to do all of your pre-slicing and dicing so that all of the fun in the end just comes from the construction as we go through. Okay, now back to the half square units at hand. We're going to go ahead and trim these down now. They were 4s, and so they trimmed down to 3.5s, and I like to do that with my slotted trimmer. I lay the line, appropriate line on the slotted trimmer on the thread lines, and then you are doing this before you press anything open, which is really nice because it actually trims 2 sides at once for us, making it very efficient. And then I just use my eye and my years of dog earing to get that done. You have slots in this tool that you could be putting the rotary cutter into, but I find sometimes that's a little dicey. Especially, and I'm so sorry to admit this, folks, but there is no denying, you can see I need to change my blade. And one of the things we often talk about in safety here, and please, this was not intended as an advertisement, but we have rotary cutter blades that are wonderful, 5-packs for usually under 30 bucks at Stitchin Heaven for the 45 millimeters. And they're awesome because no matter how wonderful your blade is, it will need to be replaced every now and again. Okay, so now as we go through and we've done these, because we're going to have these match up in the tips, right? Actually, what you might want to do is press the pink gray combos to your pink, which is kind of the darker of the 2 fabrics if you want to see it that way. And then I'm going to press the other ones to the purples. What that's really going to do is allow us to nest up at the peak or the tip, because I'm pressing to opposite fabrics. A lot of times we say press to the dark side, and that's awesome. But if you really want to know what you're building in your next units, because sometimes pressing to the dark side can make for a little bit more bulk when we get into some of these units and these thicknesses. Okay, so Yes, we are going kind of quick today. We, like I said, have a lot to cover, and you are welcome for this. A little bit more intermediate patchwork. So now we're going to build this together, like I said, but now follow the diagrams, folks, please, because there are some checkerboardy kind of effects that go on, black and white effects that go on, and the color of the actual, this is where the borrowed from the New Year's quilt we did a while ago, where we had this really cool chain block. So look, you can see the warm colors of the red, yellow, oranges coming through here, blues, greens coming through here in the cool colors. So there's that secondary element of color design going. So please follow your diagrams closely in this pattern so that it all lays out nicely. Okay, so in saying that, I have my purple over here on the left, the pink on the right, tips out like I love to do. And we're going to go ahead and join these 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you need 4 per block, so you'll make 48 total of these half square triangle units. And once all of the half square triangle units are made, we're going to add on what we can kind of call these little bar blocks here. Okay, that's these little black strips that we're going to see. So right now I'm going to press over to the purple on the half square triangle. The bar blocks are going to now be the height of our unit, so 3.5, and they're 1.5 inch strips, and they were all cut as a strip piece and then subcut down. And we're going to want to put one on both sides, and we can do those at the same time, or chain piecing style, you might want to do all of your lefts and then all of your rights or something like that. Because we're not sewing over the seams yet, we're going to do both the pressings in a moment here. And I'm going to just press into the bar block. I'm going to press into the center skinny little black, not because it is so dark, but because it's skinny and I know where I'm going with this pattern for the next units, okay? And the next units really are adding on the cornerstones for where we're at. So in your block, and I've kind of raced ahead, right, a little bit, we're going to need to go ahead eventually and take this unit, and we're going to want to match these up so that we have, and this is where the key becomes. In the pattern, I'm always asking for the red square in this upper, think of it like your heart, right? This upper corner here, there. So when you go to put these on next, we're going to want to sew on our pieces so that when we build our cornerstones, utilizing specific colors of the F and the E blocks here, they fit back in together very nicely. Okay? So with that being said, what I really want to do is I'm going to make 2 of these per block. Okay, so 24, and then I'm going to make 24 more where I take this exact same unit and we're going to add on the cornerstones, but just watch your color orientation. Okay, so I'm going to have my green over here on the right-hand side as I'm looking at it, the orange on the left-hand side as I'm looking at it, and I'm going to add on all of those now to half of these CB blocks. And I tried to label in the pattern the units based on the letters that they were combining, because a lot of this is being built kind of in rows until the final block is construction. The construction is finished, I should say. Just like before, because we're adding on to either end of our rows, we can sew on both sides before we go back to our wool mat. And we'll go ahead now, and we're going to press these out as well. Okay, now I've already been working ahead, like I said, so we've built out this sample where we already had, as I was starting to say, the red was in the upper corner. I put on the side units first. You can actually see, I mean, I'm not fooling anybody, right? I got so far out, I had to take it off and take it apart because I really want you to see this. We're going to match up these now, and I'm going to do it just making sure that the tips are always facing into that center block. Double check to make sure your greens run through your blues, your oranges run through the reds, and then just line up. And we're just going to worry about really 1, 2, 3 seam allowances as we go. So first of all, I'm lining up the top corner. And we're just going to make sure that we get a nice union at the bar block. Then traveling down, I'm going to line up my centers. and then making sure that I'm going to have a nice look at the outside edge too, because those again are kind of cornerstones framed in the black was the goal behind that look there. Okay, and then now I'm going to press away from center, as I pretty much do from the rest of the project here. The other thing I'd like to point out while I'm pressing this over is the sizes to kind of have fun with these black pieces. These bar blocks start to change in the row, so don't get too carried away thinking you know what you're doing. Do follow the instructions. In the middles we were 4.5, now we're bouncing down to 3.5. Next row out is going to change again, right? We're actually going to end up building some more half square triangles and a strip piece unit for the black and white bars, and those are all going to be at 2.5. So let's slow down and set this now aside for a few moments. Okay, we're going to jump into this piece here, and we are going to utilize 1.5 inch by the width of the fabrics of the blacks and of the white. I just say that, I did say that backwards, the black and the white, right? Okay, stitch them together, and just like before, utilizing the center of your cutting line on the seam there, 2.5 inches is what you want. For this unit now, everything's dropping down to 2.5. Okay, so you'll cut multiples of those. You'll need 4 of those for every block, so 48 for the entire project again. Okay, and then these units are set aside until we make our half square triangle units. I think it might make a little bit of sense if I show you kind of where we're heading, right? This is where we're going. So we'll be setting this aside, and then we need to make our half square triangle units and trim them down to 2.5 as well. They're made just like the first set, and by drawing the diagonal line, you're going to match up your black and your pink fabric, and you're going to match up your white and your purple fabrics, okay? Nice and simple. Again, you will want to take the time to put right sides together and draw a diagonal line, corner to corner. Use your 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides of those, slice it, and I again will recommend trimming it down with the slotted trimmer because of the efficiency of that, down to 2.5 inches for these units here. Now, as we get ready to put them together, let's look, I started to jump ahead again. Because we're building the whole row out as a unit to make life easier, we're going to set aside our half square triangles here. And we're going to prepare our next strip. Okay, so this also uses a 1.5 inch of the black, and this is now a 3.5 inch of the gray. And when these are cut down, they're going to be cut at 4.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Okay, and so technically they're going to fit in. Remember, this way, in case you're kind of thinking, where's that 2.5 inches comes from? So they're 2.5 inches, they're skinny by 4.5 inches this way. I tried to put together as much strip piecing because I believe that brings in some nice accuracy and definitely some efficiency. So for this, again, I just like to come through and I'm slicing 2.5 inch slices. Okay, as I go through, and I need 8 of these for every block unit that we're building because we're going to have these on opposite sides. So now that we have this constructed, again, you'll have all of your pieces cut, but let's build one of these units now together. Okay, so we're going to start, as you see up in your instructions, I'm now on page 3. We're going to come through here and make these. As a reminder, this black strip right here is already connected. So we really are just going to focus on this centerpiece first. Okay, again, this is what they're going to look like. Trying to keep it like the diagram. So I'm going to have my black white bar here. And the trick is, when these sew down, my corner, excuse me, certainly wouldn't have white on white. So we're going to have the edges touch, right? Opposite fabrics touch down into the corner here. So again, I'm going to take this one with my 1/4 inch seam allowance. That doesn't change, just the size, the widths do. Mathematically engineered like a genius, I'll tell you. Okay, now for this one, because it's just a small piece, I am going to take the time and I'm going to press back into this center bar. It's always easier to press into a straight piece of fabric than something that has that patchwork corner in it. Okay, and then I will grab one of my black and pink combinations here. Maybe easier said than done. And again, I want to make sure that a couple checks. Now it's easier. My print fabric to my solid, points and points matching, like colors on the right sides there. I'm going to rotate this in for a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance, matching up all the sides. And the smaller the patchwork gets, folks, actually I think it's a little bit easier to get inaccurate. So you really want to watch these last few stitches down at the bottom, making sure they stay nice against your edge guides as well. I'm going to press into the bar again. It just makes it easier on the rest of the fabric. Now we can take the time where we're at, okay, following as the diagram, but we're just going to sew on, and again, it's going to touch with the gray edges and bring these black fabrics to the outer sides. You will do this to all the units, 4 per block, so you'll have 48 for this size quilt. And then like in the step before, we're going to add cornerstones to half of those. So we're going to add the cornerstones now to 24 of these groups. You can see like before as well in the instructions as we're moving here. We have 2 different color cornerstones, so we once again need to slow down and pay attention to how we align those. I'm going to press into the bar now, the gray, again just using that concept as it's hard to press into that corner patchwork. And now we're going to introduce a couple of more fun new colors here with our golds, our mango actually, and I believe this one's called emerald. So we bring these over here, and I just want to point out, follow your diagram. You've got your lighter on the right, darker on the left here. Grab one of these, stitch it on. But again, you're only having enough units to do cornerstones to half. And for these, I'm going to press into the squares. Okay, and as we have our cornerstones and our outer edges here built, what we really need to do now, as we do each time, as I was referring to, is please bring your squares back in, rotate it so that your red units are up, and confirm that you've done all of your stitching correct. So when you swing these down here, you're going to be checking for a couple of things. Your greens and your golds are going to line up as your colors go through, and these pieces here, which you'll actually start with sewing on, are going to form out on opposite colors, and they kind of forming together what would be like this really weird looking hourglass unit. Okay, so just make sure you have those all set correctly. I may have set mine incorrectly and did some unstitching if you watched some of my live videos a while back. We will still be making these outer edges here. These are going to sew on to be these last pieces, but while we have this laid out, let's just go ahead and secure these so that you can really follow along with what I'm speaking. So again, we're going to do our short pieces first. I'm going to line up as many of my seams as possible. So I've got my corner, and then where the black touches into those smaller half square triangles, taking it nice and slow here, locking in just because my fingers could get a hold of it, the center seams. Now I've got that top seam, and following my pressing instructions, you'll have all of your seams set to nest as well here. Make sure you press these now, and I'm actually going to press into the center because I've pressed out on the outer, and the center is technically larger patchwork. So larger pieces, easier to press over to. Setting that thread, then letting the iron do the work there. Probably hear the steam as well. Okay, now, again, making sure we have everything as we need. Gold, greens touching, flip them and stitch them, lining up those seam allowances. And again, we press to that direction so we can now nest on those cornerstones. Still looking for every possible seam allowance we can along the way. Match up, show off our accuracy if need be, although do note I am wearing the Carefree Quilter shirt today, which means accuracy is a recommendation, not a requirement. Lining up my last cornerstone. Press all of these blocks now so they're back to the squares that they should be. Pressing out here is probably going to actually be easier with those cornerstones on now. Won't depend much for the end because we're doing these really skinny little strips. And we're going to build those now together as well. So I'll just set this aside on this here. And again, this is what we're building. And we're building it onto the blocks versus as individual sashings, okay? So we're gonna need black and white strips. These are 1.5 inches by 9.5 inches. We're gonna need little 1.5 inch squares, and we're gonna do like the snowball method to put these on, okay? So we're just gonna sew them on, trim them, and we're gonna need 4 for each block, so we have 1 of each to do. Now there's a very specific orientation to the angles, okay? So let's go ahead now and get these set. And in order to make that happen real easy, we're gonna go ahead and draw a couple quick diagonals on the back ends of our 1.5 inch squares of the purple and of the gray. Follow your printed instructions to make sure you know which angles are going where. So again, right now what we want to do, there's our white. Here's our white fabric, as you see in the diagram. So you're going to take this piece here and you're going to lay it so you've kind of got your wide edge up here. And then on the black ones, bring it over here and lay it. So you can see they're running in the opposite directions. And now, folks, you're going to sew on that drawn line. Where before we were making 1/4 inch from that drawn line, well, now you're sewing right on the drawn line. And yes, you can do these also chain piecing. Do all of the black ones first and then all of the white ones, because the direction will change on the long strip as you're sewing these on. Matching them up perfectly onto the corners of the strips. Sew those squares on, right on top of that chalk line. And now when I get to this point, I actually am cutting less than 1/4 inch seam allowance. You should use a ruler or something to protect your fingers, but it's so small. I like to cut maybe more of like a little bit larger than 1/8 or so, because I don't need all of that bulk in there, okay? So right now I'm gonna press over on the white one into the gray, and I'm actually gonna press into the purple on the black one. Like we did earlier with these half square triangles, just making it so our tips are nice and set up to nestle, okay? So now with all of these, the easiest way again, first is take 4 sets, stitching them together, because this way we'll now be putting our 1/4 inch guide back on. And with those sets, chain piece those as well. Just matching up, making sure you have a peak forming between the gray and the purple fabrics there. We will be adding cornerstones to 2 of these strips as well. And now, just because of the colors, let's take the time to press them over to the dark, the purple and the black. We'll do that with all of the strips there. And then, as you can see in your instructions, again, with half of your quantities, you'll be joining the white squares, the same size squares that we were just using to do these snowball corners, the 1.5 by 1.5s. And you'll go ahead and do the purple on the same side as you did originally, so the purple onto the black. And again, just half as many of these. And we'll put our skinny ones on like we did before, and I'll show you that trick. Now, as you come in, again, here is your main diagram. I probably should have pointed this out early on in the video with all the letters and everything as we follow. And I've been building it kind of into my lap, or looking at it this way with all of the diagrams, right? So that means I'm going to put on these outside edges again first. So just go ahead and just double check that that red's in the upper right-hand corner again. And then as you bring these in, it should form opposite colors here and here at that third row cornerstones, lining up the outside corners and pinching at the center. Take a moment now, and we're going to press these because the cornerstones are out. We do have to press these kind of towards the inside. Be a little more challenging with this skinny strip, so I'm just kind of, you can see it's running away from me. Grab it with the iron, set those threads, and then it'll fold over. But if it's really fighting you because it's just those cornerstones, you can press to the inside as well. It's not that much bulk at that seam that you're really fighting. It might be more of an effort to be fighting here at the ironing board. Okay, coming together cool. And I just love the way those little tips exchange in there. Make sure that's happening for you as well by having that point facing out there. Okay, when we line this up, your last check is your purples line up with your greens, white, black, all the way around, tips pointing out. Let's get these last outer rows on, folks, and then we will have our blocks all built to make our awesome borrowed time quilt. Okay, again, as I come through here, just always doing my best to line up that center seam allowance. Okay, folks, so let's go ahead and get this now pressed outward. And we're going to join a couple of blocks together here so that you can see how that goes. As a reminder, we're doing 4 by 3 for a roughly 80 by 60 on this project. And to make sure we have this fun in here with this exchange of the black and white, kind of what I call a checkerboard effect, right? We really now need to make sure that we always keep our red blocks in the same orientation, and that's going to let the oranges flow through, the blue-greens flow through. So that's the only last thing we really need to pay attention to at this point, is making sure that we keep all of the orientation of our blocks correct. And what I find is easiest to do then is I lay my blocks with that red squares where they go, okay, upper right again, slide it over, and you can see that black-white exchange happening. So just fold them, matching the cornerstones first. You should have a purple and gray one touching. Then you're just going to go ahead and business as usual. Once you get that needle set down there, I like to pinch again at the center union, that center seam. And then once I secure that, I just like to take a moment, reorganize, and align the fabrics so I make sure I can see where the bottom block is. Trying to line up there, again having a purple and gray matching on the other end. And we'll sew through here. And continually to build out the block by block into the rows of our borrowed time. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with the machine quilting. I do know, however, that I will be dropping this thing on the long arm in the next few minutes. I've got the wonderful Newer Worlds wide backs. I'll choose the blue glow dot and get it stitched out right away. So in just a few moments, you'll get to see the machine quilting at the end of this video. But I needed all of your help today building the last row so that we were ready for that point. I am so glad you are here with me today. I certainly hope you're enjoying all of these wonderful videos as much as I am having fun making them for you. Please let me know what you think of the wonderful Newer Worlds fabrics. They are available with us right here at Stitchin Heaven and hopefully in all of your other local quilt shops out there as well. Folks, again, thank you for always supporting me and my wonderful quilt projects and all of us here at Stitchin Heaven. Until we see you with another wonderful tutorial, please stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.